Welcome everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Geektopia. I'm your host Barry. Admittedly, it's been quite some time since I've done a podcast. I think it's been at least three and a half months now. I just kind of wanted to take a bit of a time out to kind of veer away from podcasting just for a little while and that. But I'm back and hoping to be churning out some material on a pretty consistent basis. Now, I just want to say that I watched Wonder Woman 1984. This is actually going to be a spoiler-free review. Admittedly, anyone that knows me knows I'm a big DC fan. 2017's Wonder Woman, I liked it, but I didn't love it. I didn't love it like so many other people did. I had some issues with the movie, but at least it was good to see a half-decent female superhero film. We had 1984's Supergirl, we had 2004's Catwoman, which is actually a strong contender for worst comic book movie of all time. We had Elektra, which came out the following year, 2005. Less said about that film, the better. Now, Wonder Woman 1984 is a film that was obviously hugely anticipated by a lot of people. You know, Wonder Woman, as I say, was released in 2017, and this film has been put back countless times. The release date has been pushed back at least 2 times that I can think of. Well, I watched it the other day, obviously limited cinema showings. Me and my partner actually watched it via a digital purchase for 16 quid. Now, I will admit, I just want to preface this by saying that I actually went into this film with pretty low expectations. I'll be honest. From what I've seen of the trailers, nothing about it has really jumped out at me and said that this is going to be really good. This is going to be awesome. As I said, even though I liked 2017's Wonder Woman, I certainly didn't love it like, so many other people did. But I kind of felt like it was a step in the right direction for the DCEU. I mean, Wonder Woman is one of the most iconic characters in the history of comic books. She was the first big female superhero created in the comic books. She is a character more than worthy of a good film. Now, Wonder Woman 84, so yeah, low expectations, I wasn't disappointed because I really didn't expect much. This film has a lot of issues. This film has a lot of problems that are impossible to ignore. I think really at its core, this film's biggest problem is actually the story itself. It really kind of baffles me. I mean, Wonder Woman is such an iconic character. She's been around for just over about 80 years now. She was created in 1941. There are decades and decades of great Wonder Woman storylines from which to be influenced by, to work from. So it really baffles me as to why they chose this story for this film. It's a story that I'm not going to go into any spoilers here, in case there's people listening that haven't seen it. But to me, this story really did feel out of place in a Wonder Woman film. There is very much a huge fantasy element to it. Don't get me wrong, Wonder Woman is a character that is kind of veered in fantasy, i.e. Greek mythology, etc. But the story for this film I found to be pretty weak. There's a lot of plot contrivances. There's a lot of things that are very much kind of forced into this movie. Now, this isn't a spoiler because anyone that's seen the trailer knows that this character's in the film anyway. Steve Trevor, Chris Pine, despite obviously dying at the end of Wonder Woman, is actually in this movie and actually plays a big part in the film. One of the movie's big focuses is actually on the relationship between Gal Gadot and Chris Pine in this movie. Now, admittedly, I commend the film for actually attempting in trying to create some heart and having them which are attempted to be heartfelt moments and, trying to elicit emotion from the audience and all that. But it just didn't work. It just didn't work for me. Now, I don't really think there's much denying there is chemistry. There is chemistry between Gal Gadot and Chris Pine, certainly. But it's the way that Chris Pine, Steve Trevor's return, is made into this film. It's just kind of screams lazy. The very moment, very early on in the film, we learn of something in this film. And as soon as I saw this moment, it was like, I know exactly what's going to happen. It was very transparent. It was a film that was very easy to telegraph. So the way he's forced into this film, I mean, one of the big issues with this movie as well is the pacing. This film has a lot of pacing issues. This film is probably about 25 minutes to half an hour too long. As I say, one of the big focuses of this movie is the relationship between her and Steve. But Steve in this case is very much the fish out of water. In the it's kind of a role reversal as such, because in the original movie, of course, Gal Gadot is a fish out of water. She spent her entire life living on Ferromascara, and obviously he's introducing her to this world now. Chris comes back in this film, and obviously this is set in 84, much time has passed, and she's introducing him to this world. So it's kind of a role reversal. There's quite a bit of humour in that between the two and stuff. Again, it didn't really work for me. I mean, Patty Jenkins has proved herself to be an efficient director. She directed a great film in 2003's Monster, based on the life of the female serial killer Eileen Wuornos, for which Charlize Theron deservedly won an Oscar. A good director, maybe, yeah. As a writer, no. I don't think she's proved herself to have much in the way of writing ability. She co-wrote this with Jeff Johns. Jeff Johns is one of the biggest names in the comic book industry. He is one of the biggest writers of his time. I mean, this is a guy that has churned out so many good to great storylines for the Green Lantern, for Flash, for Superman, for Batman. He essentially reinvented Aquaman with the New 52 in 2011. But a writer for the screen, he just seems to lack. There's just something sorely lacking. And that was this film's biggest problem. Really the pacing and just the overall storyline. Now, don't get me wrong, Pedro Pascal plays Max Lord in this film. I love seeing Pedro Pascal. I really like Pedro Pascal. Again, he's a character. He's not a straight-up cardboard cut-out kind of villain. You're kind of given some reasoning as to why he's doing what he does in this film, etc. But again, it just kind of falls flat for me. The film is trying to elicit emotion and that, so I give it some credit for that, but it just doesn't work. It just doesn't really work. Cheetah, of course, is in this film, played by Kristen Wiig. Now, I kind of like some of the dynamics they did between Diana and Kristen Wiig's character in this film. Do you know what I mean? This film, despite all its flaws, it has its moments. There are moments here and there. Admittedly, these moments are quite few and far between, but it's these moments that happen that actually made me like the film just a little bit more than I probably should have. It absolutely, it stopped me from disliking the film even more because of these moments and that. But as I said, these moments are few and far between. There's some good action sequences and that. Of course, this is a big budget blockbuster, so there's obviously a lot of CG. I mean, admittedly, it does kind of feel like you're watching like the 2017 film. It does kind of feel like you're watching a Michael Bay film at times. There's a lot of slow-mo. But, it has its moments. I mean, there's one moment in this film because I've been reading DC Comics for quite some time now, and there's one aspect of Wonder Woman that I've never actually liked. Okay, there's an element. I'm not going to say what. And I actually said to my partner before this film that I'm actually expecting this element to be introduced in this film, and it was. And it's an element that I've never been a fan of. I love Wonder Woman. I mean, Wonder Woman is one of my favourite DC characters and stuff, but this is actually an aspect I've never actually been a fan of. This is something that's been in the comics for years, it's been in the animated series, and it made its introduction in this movie. Unfortunately, should I say, it didn't translate to the screen as bad as I thought it would. But Cheetah, let's get on to Cheetah. I mean, Cheetah is one of Wonder Woman's greatest villains. Some people would say she's kind of the Joker to Batman, the kind of, she is one of Wonder Woman's top tier villains. I didn't actually mind the build-up But again, it was lazily forced into the film. You know, she becomes. I know there's been quite some criticism about the CG of Cheetah in this film. Personally, I didn't think it was that bad. It wasn't fantastic, but it wasn't to the point of it was jarring. You know, where I thought myself, because when CG is so bad, it just completely, for me, it completely takes me out of the film. It detracts me from the movie. I actually thought the fight between Diana and Cheetah, not really a spoiler, I think we all know they're going to face off. I thought it was quite good. You know, I thought it was quite good. I really kind of did feel the intensity, you know, and the aggression from Cheetah. You know, but I mean, it was. I kind of like the build up. Like I say, there are some moments. There is a moment in this film involving Kristen Wiig prior to her becoming Cheetah that I did actually quite like. And there is actually a moment in this movie that I really liked. And there's probably people that are going to bash me for saying this, but there was one moment in particular that I felt was complemented perfectly by a certain piece of music that I'm actually a big fan of. And I really liked this scene. It was a scene that I kind of expected to come at some point during the movie. But the scene I really liked, and it probably is in my top 10 DCEU moments, in all honesty. You know, there's a cameo post-credit scene, which is a kind of just a nice little touch, just kind of a, you know, a nice little wink to the Wonder Woman fans out there. I mean, a character like Wonder Woman, as you know, as I said, is one of the most iconic characters in the history of comic books. This is a character that deserves better. Now, I don't, despite all its flaws, Wonder Woman 84 to me is a big disappointment. But at the same time, I didn't really have high expectations anyway. But as disappointing as it is, to me, it's still not bottom of the barrel. It's still not one of the worst comic book movies of all time. You know, films like that, I'd have to be looking at Catwoman or Fantastic Four, you know, the 2015 version, which was terrible. Wonder Woman 84, I think, is a poor film, a very disappointing film. But it has its moments. It has its moments here and there. But the sum of its parts doesn't really make up for the overall weak storyline. You know, that was the film's biggest problem. Is the storyline? It was contrived, weak, and to be honest, it just had some moments that just kind of come across as a little nonsensical. Now, I know this is a massive disappointment for a lot of people because people have been waiting some time for this. I know Wonder Woman, the 2017 film, had a lot of fans, had a lot of people that loved it. I'm not one of them. I liked it. I think it's one of the better films in the DCEU, certainly. It just kind of frustrates me. It kind of frustrates me because I know what DC can do, okay? And it's just kind of, I just want to, not that it's a competition, I just want an age where people are sitting around talking about the DC films like they're talking about the MCU. You know, the MCU's been this huge, commercial, critical success. Not to compare, the DCU hasn't all been bad. It hasn't all been bad. It's had its moments. It's been a bumpy ride. You know, a bumpy road, sorry. You know, it hasn't really found any solid footing, and it's kind of lacked what Marvel's had, which is someone like Kevin Feige, a man that has a clear vision, knows exactly what direction they're going in, and the carefully constructed universe has seriously paid off. Whereas the DCU, they basically rushed things. They tried to rush things. It's like they were trying to play catch up with Marvel, and it really annoys me because, you know, I've been reading the comics for years now. There's so many great storylines out there. There's so many great, rich characters. Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, the Green Lantern, even Aquaman. I know Aquaman's not a character to be taken seriously by a lot of people, but Aquaman's a really good character. You know, if you said to me a few years ago that 2018's Aquaman would become the highest grossing film in the DC universe, I'd be like, you need to be sectioned. No way. But it was. It made over $1.1 billion at the box office. You know, Aquaman, again, is not a film I loved. It was okay. It certainly had its moments and that. But yeah, it's frustrating. A character like Wonder Woman does deserve better, but You know, I'm not going to say it's flat out terrible. I would still say it's probably worth watching. You know, we're not talking Batman and Robin level bad here. Just yeah, a big disappointment that really could have had about 20-25 minutes cut off. You know, the movie is heavily focused on the relationship between Diana and Steve Trevor. And, you know, it tries. It just doesn't really work. It doesn't work. And I think one of the reasons it doesn't work is because of the writing. The fact of how he's introduced into this story, how she becomes Cheetah. It's just a very kind of lazy plot mechanic that, as I said, really kind of feels like it belongs more in a fantasy movie than an actual Wonder Woman movie. But there were moments that were good. There were moments that were good, that were kind of exhilarating, I guess, at times. But overall, it's a bit of a missed opportunity. But obviously, we are getting a third Wonder Woman film, which has been officially confirmed. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, when it comes to DC films this year, Suicide Squad. I'm really looking forward to the Suicide Squad. I'm hoping that James Gunn can do for the Suicide Squad what he did for Guardians of the Galaxy. I think the Suicide Squad, he's very much kind of harking back to the golden age of Suicide Squad, I feel here. With all these lesser-known characters and this kind of air of unpredictability about it. If it's really going to follow solidly in the footsteps of the Suicide Squad comics, then I think you can expect a few characters here to probably get killed off in this movie. And it looks like it's very much going to be a throwback to kind of the action flicks of yesteryear, you know, the 70s and 80s and that. So we'll see. But yeah, my final summary for like Wonder Woman 84 is... it's watchable. It's just not really that good. It's kind of a step down from the 2017 film, even though there were some little aspects here and there that I liked, but it wasn't enough to really kind of pull the film back. But yeah, anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll be back again soon.